Happiness. What is happiness? A feeling? A place? A memory? It is something we all yearn for, or at least subconsciously try to edge towards, whilst dealing with the hardships of everyday life. When we look back in time and reminisce, we think of those moments that brought us an intense sense of euphoria, a radiant energy that no one could take away from us. Or it could be as simple as being content, being comfortable in the present moment, untroubled or indifferent to the troubles that life throws at you. Of course, we would want to yearn for this feeling, especially in the moments where we are slumped and defeated, in moments where it seems that for whatever reason, the universe is choosing to pick on us. But what if we could, for the most part, retain this sense of being content?
This may be a ludicrous position to take, especially considering that it is quite normal for us to be unhappy or just to not really feel anything at all. And I think we should embrace maybe these feelings of being upset or maybe just not feeling great, as I think it is a moment for us to grow. But I felt a profound change in my mindset over the past 12 months, and I feel, generally speaking, it has made me a lot more happier.
Perhaps, when encountering the hardships of life, it's not the outside world that needs to change, but it's our mindset towards it that will yield the response we're after. This allows us to take ownership over the grips of life, which, for the most part, seem out of our control. I believe there are 3 key factors which have been a large contributor to my changed mindset, and I feel these 3 factors may be of assistance for the new year to come. And they're as follows: perspective, education, and relative position. Perspective. Definition: a particular attitude towards or way of regarding something. A point of view. Much like most parts of life, there are peaks and troughs. With each of these experiences comes a tremendous amount of learning, especially when experiencing the troughs. Regardless of how high your peaks reach or how low your troughs drop to, the perspective that you hold is the regulating mechanism in how you view that which you are experiencing. It is the lens in which you view the world, and if that lens is in any way damaged or smudged, much like the lens of your iPhone camera, it will provide you a distorted, skewed composition of what truly lies on the other side.
This doesn't mean that when something objectively bad happens to you that you should be jumping with joy or feel anything than what should be warranted in that moment. What I'm trying to say is, when something bad happens to you, I feel that you can create 2 potential ways to view that instance, to view that thing that has happened to you that has negatively affected you. And I feel the 2 ways are as follows.
Situation A. This situation is not what was expected, not what I wanted, nor one I want to deal with. For this very reason, I'm going to view what has happened to me as an ambush against my well-being, with no attempt to learn or better my situation, no matter the extent of what has happened or occurred. Or Situation B. This situation is not what was expected, not what I wanted, nor what I want to deal with. However, if I choose to act and view what has happened to me from a different lens, one that is focused on growing and becoming a better person, I can view this experience as an opportunity to learn more about myself and the world around me, and carry that experience on to improve my life for the better. To explore this idea further, we usually experience a lot of trivial hindrances in our everyday routines, whether that is experiencing bad traffic, being hot and bothered by an unusual heat wave, or even just angry because you haven't eaten in any recent moment.
By expressing anger, discontent, or any negative feelings towards something of the outside world, what we are explicitly doing is actually conceding to the external forces, even though we have complete control over those feelings. No matter how much you may think of it, your feelings towards a particular situation are actually in your control. And this is something that I found quite interesting and quite striking discovery that I made this year.
In Man's Search for Meaning, the author Viktor Frankl writes about his times in the concentration camps in World War II and how he was able to survive. When referencing the barbaric treatment he and many others faced in the camp, he was able to come to one striking conclusion, which I believe can be applied to everyone, no matter what circumstances you bear. He writes, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." Whilst keeping this statement in mind, I recently came across another book, which essentially described the same point which Frankl touched upon. However, it was written roughly 1800 years before by Marcus Aurelius in Meditations. Aurelius writes, "If your distress has some external causes, it's not the thing itself that troubles you, but your own judgment of it, and you can erase this immediately."
As we can see, these ideas have been around for a very long time. And so I guess the question is, what can we learn from all of it? What I believe is that perspective is the regulating mechanism on how we view the world. By ensuring that we take care of the regulating mechanism, and also understanding that the perspective that we take on the world directly impacts how we view it, I think it will allow us just to live a little bit happier.
Education. What do I mean by education? Going to school, having a university degree? Well, yes, but specifically what I mean is building upon the areas which directly relate to the hardships that you come across. There is so much of the world we don't understand, and probably will never understand. Because of life's intricacies, it can be incredibly overwhelming to deal with life's troubles. So, how do we try and improve our position? Obviously, we can use the lessons of perspective, as I mentioned earlier, but we can also educate ourselves on what is, directly and indirectly, a burden to our well-being. If you are dealing with anxiety or depression, try and delve into the psychological literature and look up examples of people who have dealt with these conditions and not only recovered but overcome these mental illnesses. If you find it difficult to stand up for yourself or assert your voice in confrontational circumstances, research why this may directly relate to the primal instincts of humans wanting to mitigate conflicts among tribes. Or it could be as simple as having bad habits that over time make you unhappy on aggregate. One of my favourite writers writes in his novel Consultations of Philosophy, "We should not feel embarrassed by our difficulties, only by our failure to grow anything beautiful from them."
At the beginning of the year, I felt a strong need to know more about the world, and that directly coincided with how I felt about myself. I was really unsure of what I want to do, and I still am to some degree, but I felt once going on this journey of wanting to know more, that led me to my goal of reading 24 books, and I can confidently say that after reading, although a limited amount of books, after reading those 24 books, I feel I have a much stronger grasp on the world. And the more important part of the message of this is that by dedicating myself to learn, I was better able to understand the problems that I face and the problem that the world faces today. And I'm more confident in how I carry myself and how I do everything as a whole. And so the message is essentially, by dedicating myself to educating myself, I was better able to understand the world around me and understand my problems as a whole.
We are all born to different circumstances, different historical legacies. There is so much about who we are, where we come from, that it is impossible to try and navigate life the same way someone else would. Despite this, we live our lives looking left and right at what people are doing and then comparing their successes to our own, which leads us to manifesting negative feelings towards ourselves or even those who are achieving. The introduction of social media has made constant comparison a daily occurrence, meaning that it is almost a habit to use everyone we know as the measuring stick on how we live our lives and our successes.
Instead, what I argue is No matter how similar circumstances may appear to other people, you truly do not understand the people that you are comparing yourself to. Exceptions to best friends and family, but even when you're comparing yourself to them, on a more general basis, you do not understand truly what people do on their day-to-day lives, what their experiences are, what they've gone through, what they're even thinking, or what their general habits are. So, withstanding all this information, why would you even consider comparing yourself to that person? And granted, I do this all the time as well, you know. It's natural, it's human nature to compare yourself to other people. But we should strive to get out of this habit, which is something that I feel we're inundated with.
So, I guess the question is, if it negatively affects your health to compare yourself to others, who do we compare ourselves to? If we don't have a benchmark for success, how do we know if we're improving? The answer is, the best benchmark is yourself. By constantly comparing yourself to who you used to be, you can see the tangible growth you have made as an individual. No matter what you think about yourself, if you are better than who you were the year before, that development is attributed to your work, and no one can take that away from you. This was an idea I adopted from Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life.
This is from 12 Rules for Life. Rule 4 is compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today.
Yes.
Because you need to have a hierarchy of improvement. You need to be aiming for something, and that means you're going to be lesser than people who've already attained along that dimension.
Yes.
And that can give rise to envy. So the question is, who should you defeat in the final analysis? And the answer is, you should defeat your former self. You should be constantly trying to do that. And you're the right control for yourself too, because you're the one who's had all your advantages and disadvantages. And so if you want to compete fairly with someone, then you should be competing with you.
We all enter life at different stages, and we're all dealt different cards. However, I feel that if we work on the perspective that we take on the world, I believe that it will make us just a little bit happier. In the words of one of my favorite authors, James Allen, he writes, "As a man thinketh, so he is. As a man continues to think, so he remains."